What's going on, everybody? Birdsinthetrap MMA back at it again. Okay, today, as you can see, we are going to be going over the worst fights in the UFC, in my opinion. And I have some fights on here that are recent, some are a bit older, but I think that we can all agree there is something about these fights that are ass. Even if some of you are like, oh, well, I think it was actually a great display of mixed martial arts, and you're just kind of a casual. I think I can point out way more things wrong with these fights than there are good things about these fights, all right? But before we get into it, I am currently 2 subs away from 300, all right? I would love to hit that milestone. So if 2 of you want to just hit that subscribe button, maybe that like button as well, please do and help me reach that goal, all right? Getting into the first fight. Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson. Jeez, man. This was a rough one, okay? This fight, if you know the story of UFC 279, then you also know that this fight was put together super quick, literally 1 day notice, because of Khamzat Chimaev missing weight. And, but I still have to say that this was possibly the worst pay-per-view main event of the modern era, and also the worst display of mixed martial arts, all right? Now listen, these guys were fighting, right? It was a back and forth competitive fight. But man, I was watching this fight. I took my dad to Buffalo Wild Wings for his birthday and watched this fight. And I remember just sitting there and being like, man, this is not good. Like, both of these guys look like they need to retire. And it's just insane that it was a pay-per-view main event. It was already a weak pay-per-view. We all know that. UFC 279 was a complete dud. But this fight was just all around stinky. Of course, Tony Ferguson lost. Like, what the hell? And, like I said, both guys need to retire, but they won't. Tony has already lost again and has booked another fight. And Nate Diaz just made his boxing debut and lost. So, number 2, we have Anderson Silva versus Damian Maia and Anderson Silva versus Thales Litis, okay? Or Thales, I don't know. But, majority of us have Anderson Silva somewhere in the top 5, top 10 maybe. I think he's more of a top 10 type of guy. I know a lot of people like to put him at 4, but I value quality of wins, and he has a lot of just wins against like plumbers and gas station clerks, you know what I mean? So, but that's not the point. This isn't a GOATS video, okay? We're just going to talk about these 2 fights, all right? Silva versus Thales, it actually wasn't that bad. I rewatched it for the first time in a long time. I obviously wasn't a fan when this fight happened live. I think I was like, I don't know, I was young, but I had seen it before, but I went back and watched it, and it wasn't too bad in the sense of Silva was, knocking him down all over the place. Not knocking him down, but like punching him, and then Litis would kind of just willingly fall to the ground. Which was the main problem in this fight, okay? The constant stalling and just laying in guard from Thales just made it an overall snoozer, okay? But Anderson Silva, he was ahead of his time, and he did show that in this fight. He was using some great leg kicks, which were super effective. He also threw a leg punch, okay? He punched the dude's leg. I noticed that, and I was just like, oh, interesting. For the Damian Maia fight, however, that one is way worse, okay? Dana didn't even wrap the belt around Anderson Silva, all right? Which, if Dana is not there after his main event to wrap the belt around the champion, you did something wrong, okay? Silva, similarly, was also, like, bopping him all over the place, snapping his head back, even a knockdown. It actually, when I rewatched it, I was like, man, I could see maybe 3 knockdowns, but, maybe they were off balance. I think only 1 was actually counted. But just the thing that made it really bad was just all of the the playing around, the taunting, the acting like he was about to KO you, and Silva just did not do it at all. He just kind of dicked around out there for 5 rounds. And I think Damian Maia landed 10 significant strikes, something like that. So, yeah, absolutely embarrassing showing. What is that, 2 a round? Yeah, that's crazy. Number 3. Okay, number 3 is any Israel Adesanya title defense besides Paulo Costa. They have all been ass, okay? I don't have the Whittaker fight on here. However, there is a great argument that one could go to Whittaker, okay? And it wasn't a horrible fight. It was competitive back and forth. So I don't have that one on here either. And then, of course, he finished Paulo Costa, who showed up drunk to the fight, so obviously. But Adesanya is allergic to entertaining title defenses, guys. And, not to mention, if Pereira didn't finish him, that was going to be another unanimous decision title defense. That, the first Pereira fight, it wasn't a complete snoozer, but the Izzy with the ZZ sleeping emoji, that would have been a bigger meme than it already was. But the Romero fight was just, I know you guys have seen the memes where they're just both figuring out their buttons to their controllers, you know what I mean? Just standing in front of each other. And that was the whole fight. As you can see here, I said Adesanya outlanded Romero 48-40, which is, okay, fair. But 25 of them were leg kicks, you know what I mean? And, as we can see in this picture, although Yoel Romero didn't get his hand raised, he did kind of punk Adesanya, you know what I mean? Because Adesanya was talking all that shit about how he's going to finish him and he'll be the first one to do it. Second, actually. But nonetheless, didn't happen. Romero kind of embarrassed him. And this kick-started the hate train for Adesanya. And Romero could have won this. Arguably should have won rounds 1, 2, and 5. So, another robbery title defense for Adesanya. I don't want to say robbery, but I think that was just too little to even score. But if you were going to give it to anyone, I think it should be Romero. The people pay pay-per-view, so this was really disappointing. This is one of those fights where you have all your friends over and you're like, yeah, this one, guys, trust me, this one is going to be crazy. And then just, yeah, the people pay pay-per-view. All right, number 4, Francis Ngannou versus Derek Lewis. All right, this was a fun fight on paper, of course. 2 of the heaviest hitters in the UFC, 2 total knockout artists who, aren't big fans of going to the decision. So what is there not to like about this fight? Well, there was a warning for timidity, which is crazy. You barely see that happen. I haven't seen that happen in forever. Actually, if anyone can name the most recent time there was a warning for timidity, I would love to know. But I can't recall it. This fight is when the fear of losing is greater than the will to win. Both guys just way too scared to engage and make anything happen. That was noteworthy in this fight, all right? Lewis only won this by just doing a little more. You know what I mean? I think he outstruck him by like 10 strikes. I don't have the exact numbers, but I know that they both... I think Ngannou landed somewhere in the teens. You know what I mean? And I think Lewis was somewhere in the 30s. So, yeah. But it is crazy to have this win on paper if you're Derek Lewis. You know what I mean? A decision win over Francis Ngannou. And, when Derek was on his last fight in the UFC, which was his last fight, I'm sure the PFL was like, hey, that Ngannou-Lewis rematch is hot. But I'm sure that the fight has made him a ton of money long-term due to the UFC not wanting him to leave. So I'm sure they threw him an extra bag when he signed his new 8-fight deal. So, yeah, this one was just an overall stinker. Now, a recent example, okay, Corey Sandhagen versus Rob Font. Now, this is one of those ones where, if you're an old head in the chat, you could be like, well, hey, this was a really good display of mixed martial arts, and and, you know, grappling is fun. Now, listen. I can appreciate some grappling. I'm not one of these guys who boos grappling at all. I welcome it. But, you know, there's entertainment, and then there's this, okay? 34 significant strikes for Sandhagen and 9 for Rob Font in a 5-round fight. Now, Sandhagen had an injury coming into this fight and wanted to play it safe, which is understandable, but it was just disappointing to see that he didn't try to finish the fight, you know, didn't go for any, you know, Volkanovski ground and pound, you know, no submission either. Just super unfortunate, because I think he could have won this on the feet. I was picking him. My official pick for this was round 4, TKO for Sandhagen. But, yeah, I mean, whatever. 20 minutes of control time, dominant, but at what cost? And to make this fight even worse, in the 5th round, when Rob Font was losing every single round, what does he do? I think in the last, minute, he starts going for control time on Sandhagen. Like, he gets in a dominant position and just sits on top of him, too. What the fuck are you doing? I was raging at that when I watched this fight. I fell asleep at round 1. You know what I mean? Woke up at round 4, thought it was still round 1. But turns out they were going into the 5th. So I watched that round. And, yeah, I mean, just seeing Rob Font be an absolute idiot out there and not try and get the finish. Maybe he thought there was another round. Maybe he thought he had more time. But nonetheless, ridiculous from both guys. The crowd did not like this. All right. And I won't be surprised if we don't see Sandhagen main eventing a fight night again. Moving on to another recent example. Gracie versus Charles Jourdain. Okay. I was laughing my ass off at this fight. You know what I mean? This was funny. But it was also so cringy. You know, I was watching it and I was just like, oh, every time Gracie would just be mediocre on the feet and then just drop to his ass and scoot forward, I was just like, oh. That's basically the story of this fight. If you guys haven't seen it, mediocre striking from both. Jourdain, who won, didn't even look that good himself. But, you know, horrible striking from both, and then just an outdated style. That's what it was for Gracie. He thought this was UFC 1, UFC 2. He didn't realize that this was UFC 288, okay? Living in the past. And this was one of the first cards I showed my girlfriend, and I was like, it's going to be a good card. I don't know about this fight, but it's going to be a good card. And, yeah, we got to watch this absolute embarrassment of a man in Gracie. His family should be embarrassed and ashamed that stupid butt scoot jiu-jitsu doesn't work anymore. Get it out of the sport, all right? This was on a pay-per-view. Worst part about it is it had to go the distance. We had to watch it the whole time. Couldn't be a finish, you know? That's just how it is. Number 7, the finale, okay? We all know it. Rose Namajunas versus Carla Esparza. This was perhaps the worst fight of all time. I think you could put this up there with Adesanya and Romero, and maybe a few others you could put up there, but this one right here takes the cake, especially for the women's divisions. It's definitely the worst women's fight of all time. And to make things even worse, if you guys remember this fight, which I don't even remember this fight. I can't recall anything, you know. If my memory serves me correct, I think they threw some punches, you know. I think that there were some punches between them. I think there was maybe a kick, maybe 2 kicks. And, I think there was a takedown. Yeah, you see the takedown right here. There was some takedowns, and that was about it. This happened in between 2 of the craziest finishes that year. Last year, you had Michael Chandler killing Tony Ferguson, getting charged for murder, okay? Absolute shame. You had that happen, this fight, and then you had Oliveira submit Gaethje in the first round, which their 4-minute fight was better than this whole thing. And they may have thrown more strikes in that 4-minute fight than this fight. So you can't even score this fight but I think that they kind of gave it to Carla just as a fuck you to Rose. Like, what the hell was that? And this was after a boring title defense, in my opinion. Her second fight with Zhang Weili was boring as hell. So, that's just what it is, guys. I mean, do I have a slide after this? No. So this is where I'm ending off the video. Okay, if you guys enjoyed this one, be sure to leave a like. Like I said, I'm a few subs away from 300. I would love to hit that goal by the end of the day. So hit that sub button. And let me know some of your least favorite fights of all time. Let me know if my list sucks or what you would add to it, all right? I'll see you all in the next one.